Spirited Away time. I have a Soot Sprite shirt. Technically, those also apply to Totoro, since that's technically where they first appear, but, you know, they're a bit more prominent in Spirited Away. So, Soot Sprite shirt. Also, puppy in the background. Hi, Brenda baby. She a good girl. Okay, so if I've figured this up correctly, I think this is supposed to be either the first or the second Studio Ghibli video going up in 2024. So hopefully by the time this goes up, I will have seen The Boy and the Heron, because my dad and I are planning on going to go and see it over New Year's weekend or so, or the weekend of New Year's range. So hopefully I'll have seen it by then. By the time this goes up. I will still end up, of course, doing a review of The Boy and the Heron, but that will not be until after I finish the reviews of everything else, because by then, hopefully it will be on either DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming, and I can watch it again and get make sure that I'm getting the story correct after only just seeing it once. Okay, so as I mentioned back when I first started doing the Miyazaki movie reviews, or the Studio Ghibli reviews, Spirited Away has a special place in my heart. It came out in 2001, and it is the 12th animated feature film directed by Miyazaki and, produced by Studio Ghibli and everything. I know Miyazaki does not direct every single one of them. Toshio Suzuki has directed several, along with the woman who directed Whisper of the Heart. And subsequently other directors have taken the helm for other movies throughout the run of the studio thus far. But as I mentioned way back, this movie does have a special place in my heart. Not that all of the Ghibli movies to a degree don't have a special place in my heart. Like Nausicaa, I'm pretty sure was the first one I ever saw, way back with one of the previous dubs of it before it got to the Disney dub with Alison Lohan. Spirited Away has a special place in my heart because while I had seen it before, I watched this at the hospital the day that my sister was giving birth to my older niece, who is going to be 21 years old in 2024. And I watched this movie with her for the first time only a couple of weeks before I'm recording this. And I could have sworn I had shown it to her at some point in time while she was growing up. Apparently I did not, because she was very much surprised by a bunch of the stuff that happened in the movie. And I could have sworn I had shown it to her. I've shown her and the other two, my other niece and nephew, other Miyazaki movies. I thought I had shown them Spirited Away. But apparently not. I could tell from just watching her that my niece very much enjoyed the movie and loved it and everything. And I just, I watched this movie at the hospital the day that she was born. We had stopped off at this little, not a Blockbusters, it was a more local company called Audiovisual, where you could get like 5 movies for $5 for 5 days. And we stopped and we got like 5 VHS tapes. This was back when VHS was a thing. For all you kids who don't know what VHS is. And Spirited Away was one of the ones that we got, along with, I don't remember what other ones we got because I wasn't paying that much attention to them. It was my mom wanted to get something for me to be able to sit and watch while I was at the hospital, because they had a little TV area within the maternity ward, so that way I could sit there and watch this. Bear in mind, I'm, 12 at this point in time, and 11, almost 12, going on at this point in time. In 2003, and and I had no smartphone back then. I didn't have a smartphone until after high school, mostly because we couldn't afford one. But eventually, I sat and I watched this movie at least 2, maybe 3 times during the time frame that we were at the hospital. I have no idea what the nurses thought I was watching, but I was quiet. And I wasn't distracting them or bothering them, except maybe like, hey, can I get water or something like that? But so that's my main memory of that. And then it's like, my sister is giving birth in like one of the rooms right down the hall. And then, of course, I don't remember if I specifically got to hold my older niece that day or not. I probably did, or at the very least, very shortly after that. But yeah, so that's how that is kind of burned into my brain. Um, some other details about the movie, as I stated before, this came out in 2001, and this movie is what made Disney want to start dubbing so many of the different Miyazaki movies and the Studio Ghibli movies and everything like that. And up until very recently, Spirited Away I believe, held the record for the box office in Japan for highest grossing movie until it was overtaken a couple of years ago by the Demon Slayer Mugen Train movie that they had. When it was finally toppled from its place. But it held that for a good long time, for like 19, 20 years, something like that range. So that's pretty dang respectable in that regard. In regards to that, that's awesome. And as I said, Spirited Away was kind of the one that helped bring it a bit more here because of how impactful it was and how powerful it was in regards to the amazing animation and the story and everything like that. And also, yes, the Chihiro is based off of the daughter of one of Miyazaki's friends, who is also a director. Is based off of her because she was a very lazy 10-year-old girl. So he based the character off of her, which is adorable. So going into the actual story of it, so getting into the actual meat of the video, the movie starts with Chihiro, who is the 10-year-old girl, and her parents, who are on their way to their new home. Chihiro is not happy about this, and she's whining and complaining and everything like that about the move, which, admittedly, as a person who was kind of made to move when I was a kid for various reasons, parents got divorced, one moved to an apartment, and everything. Sometimes the child is not given the choice in the matter of whether or not you are moving. So yeah, there's that. The kid is not necessarily always consulted in that regard, which I think is kind of sometimes rude of the parents to do. Sorry, mom and dad. I know a lot of cases the parents don't have a choice in the matter, that they have to move, but still. And Chihiro is just complaining about this and everything like that. She is not happy. She got this bouquet from her friend and has a little card in there with her name on it and everything like that, saying goodbye to her and everything. And, while the parents are driving, the dad ends up taking a wrong turn or something like that, and they end up going down this little forest path. And one of the things they see is a bunch of these little different what look like little tiny houses. The mom explains to Chihiro that they are like shrines, that little spirits live in them, is what people believe. And this leads to the dad then driving them down this path in the woods because he thinks that he can get them to their house through this path. So it's like, just back up and go back on the main road, and you will save yourself and your family a lot of problems here, dude. Listen to your wife. The wife is being the reasonable one at this point in time. And they're driving down this path, and as they're driving, they end up coming to a very abrupt stop in front of this big, what looks like an old building with a statue in front of it, and they almost run into the statue. Dad proceeds to get out of the car, start investigating the building, looks it over, figures out that it's actually made of plaster, not stone, and that's why it looks so old. It's designed to look old. And Chihiro gets out of the car and kind of goes to look, and then the mom is just like, just please get back in the car. And then the mom gets out of the car and goes. One of the important things that happens in this scene is that Chihiro's mom tells her to hang on to her goodbye card, and Chihiro ends up having it in her pocket. So pay attention to that. What else ends up happening is the dad decides, let's go through here and explore and see what's going on that. Go see what this is. And Chihiro is like, this is a bad idea, and she's trying to get them to not go in. So it's like, listen to the kid in this regard. Do not follow the weird, creepy tunnel. And, you know, the parents go in, and then Chihiro ends up going in because there's like the creepy statue by the front of the building. She's like, I don't want to stand by the creepy statue. And she follows them in. And we have the scene where she's just like clinging to her mom's arm, which was me at various points in time, depending on where we were and what was going on. When I was a kid, I was kind of a scaredy cat. Still am. Just have more logic behind it now. Although Chihiro has the right idea of, let's not go down the creepy tunnel in the weird building. And they make their way through, and they end up finding what looks like this kind of train station set up inside, or, you know, this like sitting area and everything like that. And the dad's like, huh. You know, they hear what sounds like a train, and they end up following it the rest of the way out, or following the sound the rest of the way out. And the dad's like, oh, this must have been an old train station or part of an amusement park or a theme park that they built back in the 90s. But then the economy went bad. And they're looking out over this giant field that just has, like, you know, dilapidated, you know, houses and like stone statues that are just covered in moss all over the field. And they end up, you know, walking further and further. Chihiro is trying to say, just no, let's go back to the car. This place is creepy. Let's just go. Again, not listening to the child when they should be. And they make their way across this beautiful field, admittedly, and they end up coming to where what would be, you know, oh, they were going to put in a river here. So there's like a river area where, you know, a lot of stones were. And they make their way across, and the dad starts to smell something. And they end up following the smell to where they find all of these buildings, and they're all different restaurants. And the design of this area is awesome, and it actually reminds me a bit of like the Fairway area when you go to like a state fair or something like that, where there's just all of these different carts and stalls and booths and stuff like that that just have so many different kinds of food and such like that. And you can go through and pick up what you want from each stall and everything like that. All these different amazing restaurants and stuff like that all over the place, but there's no one else there, and everything looks kind of dilapidated, like the paint's chipping. There's, you know, the signs don't look 100% new. There's just, you know, stuff looks like it's gone a little bit out of care, bit neglected. And they make their way through, and they find where some of the food is, and the dad and the mom sit and proceed to begin to eat the food, even though Chihiro is telling them they shouldn't. Admittedly, both of the parents try to find out if there's anyone there, so that way they can pay for the food, you know, buy the food, you know, and then start eating it. But no one seems to be there. And the dad just starts picking up all of the food and everything like that and bringing it over, and the mom and him start eating. And just gobbling it all up. Admittedly, the food does look delicious, but I would also be the type of person that would be like Chihiro and be like, we probably shouldn't be doing that. If I was in this situation, I'm like, I'm not just going to start taking someone's food. There's no sign that says we're supposed to take it, and then we can pay later. The dad does make the comment of like, well, I have credit cards and cash. I can pay when the person comes back. It's like, okay. Not really going to help you in this case, dude. But I would be the person like Chihiro that's just like, yeah, no, we probably shouldn't be doing this. I'm not going to eat this because I don't know if I don't know what's in the food. B, there's no one here, and I don't know if we're allowed to take it. So I would hope I would be the more logical person in that regard. Chihiro leaves her parents to let them eat, and she goes and kind of wanders around the area, and she ends up finding her way to this giant building. And it's this bathhouse on this other side of this bridge. And she starts crossing the bridge, and like she hears a train, and she looks under the bridge, and she sees the train go under the bridge. And then she ends up meeting this boy named, this boy, he's not given a name quite yet. His name is Haku, for reference. She ends up meeting Haku, and he sees her, and he tells her to, what are you doing here? You have to leave, get across the river before nightfall and everything like that. And she ends up trying to, he kind of like shoves her and tells her to go, and she like listens to him and tries to run, and she ends up running through the restaurant areas, and as she's running through, we see like these blackish shapes start to appear. And she ends up coming to where her parents were, and in their place she ends up finding these two pigs that are wearing her parents' clothing. It's the parents were turned into pigs because they ate the food of the spirits. And she ends up, I would freak out at this too if I came across this and my parents had been turned into pigs. And they don't seem to recognize her. All they want to do is keep eating and eating. And Chihiro runs and she tries to escape, and she gets to where like the river, should not be, and she falls into a river, and she gets out of the river. And as she's sitting there, she's looking across the river, or as she's like kneeling there trying to figure out what the heck is going on, fair point, across the river comes this beautiful lit up boat, and it docks, and off the boat start coming all of these different spirits that are all different, unique designed. And there's ones that are ducks, which makes my mom very happy because she loves ducks. And so she's watching all these different spirits get off this boat and everything, and she's like, I'm dreaming, wake up, please wake up, this is just a dream, go away, disappear. She's like, if I can just wake up out of this, everything will be fine. And we end up watching as she slowly becomes see-through. It kind of starts with her toes and her hands, and then her shoes and her hands, and eventually it's just she is see-through. And she's freaking out more, which admittedly, again, do not blame the girl. I would be freaking out in this situation too if this started happening to me. And she kind of runs off, and then she is eventually found by Haku. And he explains to her that, yes, your parents were turned into pigs, but the only way that you can help them is if you can actually get a job here. What he also tells her is that she has to eat something from that world, so he feeds her like a berry. Her hand also just kind of like literally goes through his head when she tries to like push him away. And he feeds her the berry, so she's able to actually be in their world, and she's no longer see-through and everything like that. She's much more stable. Then they end up seeing this bird that's out trying to find her, and he protects her. And then they end up trying to make their way into the bathhouse, and what they have to do is they have to cross the bridge. And Chihiro is not allowed to take a breath until she is on the other side of the bridge. So she's supposed to hold her breath as they cross the bridge, which is, I'm quite certain, based off of a different type of superstition. I know that there's like the superstition that when you go by a graveyard, you're supposed to hold your breath or something like that, which we have this very large graveyard, or very large cemetery here in Lincoln that's called Wayuka, and it's beautiful, but I still don't like driving through there. But I used to do it where I was like, when I was a kid, I would try to hold my breath for as long as I could as we're driving by it. I don't know why, but I did. I could never make it all the way through because it's a very, very long cemetery that's, several blocks long. But I'm assuming there's something to do there with like Japanese tradition, where it's just like a middle or Eastern tradition and stuff like that, where taking a breath within certain areas is taboo or is not good or something like that. And as they're crossing the bridge, Chihiro is doing very well trying to hold her breath. And then the frog shows up, and that makes her gasp, and Haku actually ends up having to, kind of rush them past everybody else, and he takes her and he kind of hides her for the moment. And what ends up happening is, everybody in the bathhouse is just like freaking out. We also see that all of the different spirits have been heading their way into the bathhouse, and Haku explains, or somewhere in here, it's explained to Chihiro that this is a bathhouse for the spirits. And what ends up happening is Haku explains that the only way that she'll be able to stay here is that if she ends up getting a job, because if she has a job, then Zeniba, it's Yubaba, who is the leader of the bathhouse, the mistress of the bathhouse, the owner of it, however you want to put it, that even if that once Chihiro has a job, she cannot technically harm hers and she cannot make her leave because she has a job. And Haku, kind of, tells her, okay, you have to go down these steps and go this way and go that way. And one other thing in this, as a testament to show the design that gets put into this movie, at one point when Haku and Chihiro are running through parts of the restaurant area and such, to get to the bathhouse, they're just running through all of these different, kind of backstage areas or different areas that are just like, these are sets, not sets, but scene design that are used for like one scene in this movie, and you never see them again. And they're just racing past them, but there's still so much detail there. But it also like fills in gaps in the story, because it's just like, well, they have all these spirits here and they have to feed them. Where are they keeping all this food? Here's all the places they're keeping all of this food and everything. So we kind of see that going on there, which I just love that that's there. It's like, these are not necessary to make the story plot work, but it's just, it's there. Miyazaki threw it in there, so you get it. And that's just kind of nice. But Haku explains that you have to go down these stairs and everything like that. You find your way to the boiler room and you'll meet a man whose name is Kamaji, and you have to ask him for a job. He'll try to test you and turn you away, but just keep asking. You have to get a job because that will protect you from Yubaba. And he's like, now I have to go. And she's like, I don't want you to leave me though. And he's like, it's okay. You'll be fine. Just do what I said. And remember, I'm your friend. And he ends up going back into the bathhouse to, try to calm everybody that's going on. There's also a moment where she asks him how he knows her name. And he says, I don't know. I just know your name's Chihiro. I've known you for a very long time. And, he heads off inside. Chihiro waits a few minutes, and then she has to make her way down the stairs on the outside of the on the outside of the bathhouse, which is just kind of a funny scene because on her way down, which, again, okay, there's no railing on the outside of the steps, so I guess she's like trying to like carefully scoot her way down the steps as quietly as possible so she's not going to be discovered. And I can understand her wanting to take the steps somewhat slowly, but I just love how they put emphasis on this, where she's like, she could just easily like, run down the steps and probably be okay and no one's really going to notice her because there's no one else out there right now. But she's still very scared. And she's like trying to like scoot her way down the steps. She like slips once, and then at one point one of the steps breaks, and she's just like full blast running down the stairs, screaming with her hands in the air and just going like, ah, and she like runs into the wall. And she ends up being fine, but it's just that funny moment there, and she ends up making her way through and making her way down to where the boiler room is, and she ends up seeing Kamaji, who is this six-armed spider type thing. Well, he's a man, but he's like has 6 arms, and he's using them to do so many different things while he's running the boiler. And then he has all the little soot gremlins, soot sprites, that are carrying coal and dropping it into the furnace to keep the baths warming, keep the water boiling for the baths. So we have, we kind of see that design, and I love that whole setup there. And Chihiro kind of has to like, psych herself up to go in, and she manages, she makes herself go in and talk to Kamaji, and she's telling him, I need a job. Can you please give me a job? And he's like, very grumbling about it. And he's like, no, I don't have any work for you. Blah, 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 blah. I have the soot sprites. There's soot all over the place. If I want helpers, I'll just cast a spell and it makes more of them and everything. And she's like, but I really need a job. And, we have this kind of back and forth between the two of them. And then he ends up getting all of, he's like summoned to make 3 baths at once. So he's having to like work through that even more while they're having this conversation. And the soot sprites keep bringing more and more coal. And what ends up happening is Chihiro is kind of in the way, and she manages to get out of the way, and then one of the soot sprites ends up dropping the coal on them and squishing themselves on accident. I kind of have a theory that, like, this is somehow one of the soot sprites is trained to do this, that if anyone shows up, one of the soot sprites is supposed to, like, do this, trained to do this by Kamaji, and then he will end up, as a way to, like, test the person that came. And, what ends up happening is Chihiro ends up picking up the piece of coal, and she has to manage to get it into the furnace. So we see this moment where she's, it's this test of, like, how far are you willing to go for this? And she gets the coal, thrown into the furnace and everything like that. And this then makes all the other soot sprites are like, oh, she did that one's work for them. Do our work for us too. And they keep dropping they keep dropping the coal on themselves on purpose to try to get Chihiro to, do their work for them. Kamaji then scolds her for, you can't just come in here and take someone else's job and everything like that. And what ends up, they have to work, or the spell wears off or whatever. And the soot sprites then proceed to, then each of them gets really close to Chihiro and drops the thing, like, right around her feet. So they're, like, kind of trapping her in the corner. And then out of the door that comes into there, that's from the bathhouse itself, comes this she's a maid, waitress, cleaner type thing. Her name is Lin. And she comes in and she has food for Kamaji, and she also has little, like, candy star things for the soot sprites. And while she's there, she sees Chihiro, and she's like, you're the one everyone's looking for. You're the one that's causing all of this problem. Which Kamaji then says that she's my granddaughter. Now, I don't know if this is something that is in both translations. I know this is what's in the English translation. I don't know if it's separate. Generally, in the notes that I found, they will make a connotation if it is different in the Japanese than in the English for anything major. So I'm assuming both in the Japanese and in this, he says that Chihiro is his granddaughter. I'm assuming this is just something he is saying in order to help convince Lin to take Chihiro to go see Yubaba, because admittedly, we never end up finding out anything else about Chihiro's family beyond her and her parents. But I just, like, is it possible he really is her grandfather? Is that possible? That, like, are her mom or her dad half spirit or something, and they don't know it? Is there something there for it? I don't know. We also find out that, like, Kamaji's been at the bathhouse for over 40 years, so, I have no idea. I think he's just doing it to, like, try to convince Lin to take Chihiro up to Yubaba. And he's like, she's a tough little girl, will you take her to Yubaba so she can get a job? And, Lin, he kind of has to bribe her. He gives her a roasted newt, which I have never had roasted newt. I have no intention of ever having roasted newt, but apparently it's something Lin really likes. I also believe that Lin is supposed to be a fox spirit, if I remember correctly. Since there's some of the different spirits that we don't ever quite get what they're supposed to be. Some of them it's very obvious, but some of the ones that look very human, Lin might just be, I think she is supposed to be a fox spirit, but it's not like we ever see her take on the form of a fox or anything like that. But, Lin agrees, and she takes Chihiro, and she also points out to Chihiro that you should really thank the Boiler Man. He's sticking his neck out for you, which of course Chihiro does. Chihiro also leaves her shoes and socks there with the soot sprites and Kamaji. And because as we see as we walk through the bathhouse, all of the different people who are the servants of the bathhouse that work there, none of them are wearing shoes or socks, which I know is a reference to in lots of different Japanese and Chinese and, like, that Eastern setup, tradition there, that wearing socks and shoes inside. Specifically, wearing shoes that are not house slippers is considered very rude, or different things like that, depending on the circumstances as to the building you are in. If it is a residence type of a thing. I don't 100% know the rules about that, but I'm at least somewhat aware of that. I don't have any friends who are Japanese, so I can't ask them. Okay. I don't have any major friends who are Japanese that I would want to ask them. So we get this kind of tour of the bathhouse as Lin is taking Chihiro through the bathhouse. And it's this beautiful bathhouse. We see the different spirits there, lounging in tubs, being pampered, getting food, different things like that. We see all these other types of spirits that are there. We see like these frog spirits that tend to be a lot of the different numerous ones. We see also a bunch of these other women who are probably to a degree set up to be somewhat like a brothel setup to a degree. To serve the spirits in various ways and to help pamper them and everything like that. So we see that, and Lin is leading Chihiro through there, and they take these different elevators up, and then while they're doing that, they end up running into the radish spirit, who kind of ends up following them. And then after shoving Chihiro into an elevator and the radish spirit goes in after her, Lin ends up having to deal with one of these frog spirits that are there, the frog workers. And he's like, "You smell like a human." And she's like, "Is it this that you're smelling?" And she pulls out the newt and she starts taunting him with it, which is hilarious, and I love it. And she's telling Chihiro, under the guise of telling the radish spirit, that like, "Oh, if you want to go up any higher, if you want to go up, you need to pull the lever, next to you, and keep pulling it down until you get all the way up to the top. That's where Yubaba's office is." And Lin, Chihiro is, pulls the lever and everything like that. She's kind of squished in there with the radish spirit, which is funny. But she pulls the lever, and then Lin is continuing to taunt the frog, and he's begging her. It's like, "Can I please have a leg? Let me suck on the tail, please." Just like begging her for the food and everything like that, which is just hilarious. And Lin just proceeds to shove the entire newt in her mouth and just like eat it right in front of him, and he's just like, "Ah." Which I love Lin. She is great. I love her throughout this entire movie. She also keeps calling Chihiro a dope, which is funny. And Chihiro and the radish spirit can ride the elevator all the way up to the top, where Chihiro gets off, and the radish spirit has no ill will toward her or anything like that. I think he's actually trying to help her to a degree, or it's at least he's decided that like, small humanish girl, I will help you, type of thing. I don't know. The radish spirit doesn't talk, and we don't get an inner monologue for most of these characters, so I just assume he decides he likes her and wishes to help her. We never get an answer as to otherwise. But Chihiro ends up getting up to this door that has this very disturbing looking knocker on it, which then talks to her, Christmas Carol style. And she ends up then, I was going to put on a bunch of rings to like represent Yubaba and all of her rings, and I'm just like, no. That would be very clicky and noisy in the video. By the way, I hope there's no clicking in the background of this. I checked beforehand and I didn't think I heard any clicking, so I guess I'll find out when I'm editing. But what ends up happening is she ends up hearing Yubaba say, "Aren't you even going to knock? You're the most pathetic little girl I've ever seen." And she ends up, just kind of pulling her fingers, and Chihiro ends up getting pulled through the door and just pulled through the hallways and through other doors and everything like that, until she is just unceremoniously dropped into Yubaba's office, where she's just dropped in front of the fireplace in front of these 3 giant green head things that I have no idea what they're supposed to be. And start taunting her and scaring her, and Chihiro is just very scared at this. Not that I blame her. And Yubaba is scolding her and everything like that for the fact of your parents ate the food of the spirits and now they're pigs. I could turn you into a piglet, or a lump of coal, or all this other stuff that she's trying to like taunt Chihiro with. And Chihiro is like, I just want a job, just give me a job. And there ends up being this Yubaba kind of does the explanation that this is a bathhouse for the spirits. This is where they come to replenish themselves and rest and everything else. And why should I even hire you? And she the speech she gives is like, why on earth should I hire you? Anyone can see that you're a lazy, spoiled, stupid crybaby. What job would I possibly have for someone like you? You're wasting your time. I've got all the bums I need. Or maybe I'll give you the nastiest job I've got and work you night and day until you breathe your very last breath. Like, got her nails like right around Chihiro's neck, and Yubaba is this huge woman with a giant head. And so she's considered, she's threatening Chihiro, trying to scare Chihiro out of this. And Chihiro, at this point we hear a giant cry, and we hear this cry, and Yubaba has to run over and try to take care of this baby that's in this other room that keeps kicking and breaking things. And given the size of the foot we see, it's a very large baby. And Chihiro is, keeps saying, I need a job, give me a job, and everything like that. And, this is, part of Yubaba's office gets a little bit destroyed at one point in time when, Yubaba is being, dealing with the baby, and also had been, shouting at Chihiro at that point in time. And what ends up happening is, Yubaba has to relent, and she gives Chihiro a contract, and Chihiro signs the contract. And Yubaba is like, after the baby is calmed down, she's like using her magic to like fix everything around her and everything like that, put everything back where it's supposed to be, which is kind of just like this fun scene while she's putting her hair back together and everything like that, while she's explaining to Chihiro. And she's like, I can't believe I took that oath to give a job to anyone who asks, and everything like that. And Chihiro is signing her name on the paper. And when the paper comes back over to Yubaba, she looks over and she's, oh, your name's Chihiro. What a pretty name. And then she like moves her hand over the contract, and like part of the name peels off. And of course it's written in, I don't know if it's written in kanji or katakana, but like the part of the name like peels off and goes into Yubaba's hand. And she's like, from now on your name is Sen, which I'm assuming in Japanese, in regards to how it's written from Chihiro to Sen, makes a little bit more sense than it would be from Japanese, that it does look in English. But I don't know. What does that mean for the way that my name would get translated into that? Like Amanda. I don't know what my name would end up being. Da? I don't know. I don't. Mandy, I guess, would qualify, I guess, since it is a nickname that I go by, but still. She's like, now on your name is Sen. And at this point, she summons Haku. Yubaba summons Haku, who comes in and is, this is Sen. She's under contract. Find her a job. And, and she, Haku instructs Chihiro to call him Master Haku, and she's like, okay. And he takes Sen, she's Sen at this point in time, takes her down to the workers, who are just, none of them want to deal with her. The frogs don't want her in their department. The ones that are like kind of the more hospitality women don't want her in their department because she smells and she'll stink up the whole place and everything like that. And she ends up eventually getting assigned to be Lin's assistant, which I'm pretty sure Haku probably had that planned from the beginning. Haku also tends to be giving off this very cold, stoic vibe now at this point in time to to Sen, even though he was very friendly to her before. Now he's been very like standoffish to a degree, even going so far as to say that if she doesn't work hard, then boil her or something like that. If she doesn't work hard, then, threaten her or do whatever. But, she's under contract now. And, so Chihiro ends up getting assigned to, or Sen Sen ends up getting assigned to be Lin's assistant. I do it does explain that the way that Yubaba is able to control people is by taking their name, which I know in a lot of different types of fantasy stories and stuff like that, that having someone's name, having someone's like true name is a very important thing because it represents something. I know, different demons and different types of creatures and stuff like that that like make deals with people. Having that person's actual name is very important in regards to setting up the deal and stuff like that. And I would assume the same thing would apply here as well. In that regard, but Lin is actually very happy that Chihiro managed to make it, and ends up, is actually very happy with Chihiro that she managed to, make it and get the job and everything like that. And, that Sen managed to do that, and they head back to where would be their room, and they end up getting, Sen an outfit and everything, and Sen asks, "Are there 2 Hakus?" And Lin's like, "Oh god, no, I can barely stand 1." But she's like, "Yeah, Haku is Yubaba's henchman. Don't trust anything that he says," which then just makes Sen just not, Sen has now had this moment where it's like, okay, she's gone from seeing her parents turn into pigs, finding out that the spirit world is real, turning invisible, almost turning invisible, disappearing, blah 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 blah. Had to, get the job, do all of this stuff, and now she has a job, and now she's at least somewhat safe. And she has the ability to try to save her parents. And she's like, the adrenaline rush is ending, and she just starts, crying and everything like that. Kind of the next morning, Yubaba Yubaba has turned herself into this bird that looks identical to the bird with the woman head, and they fly off. And then, Sen is sleeping. She's not really asleep. She's kind of just like laying there, and I think she's probably having a version of like a night terror or something like that. But Haku sneaks into the room where all the other ones are, or all the rest of them, the maids, are sleeping, and he's like, meet me at the bridge. I'll take you to see her parents. And Sen gets out of the room, and she makes her way gets dressed, makes her way all the way down to the boiler room, makes her way out. She finds out that the Soot Sprites had kept her shoes, and they give the shoes back to her, so she heads out, and makes her way to the bridge where she finds Haku, and he leads her through to the area where all of the pigs are and everything like that, where her parents are sleeping everything off, and they are very much pigs and everything. And he explains that, yeah, your parents have been turned into pigs, but you need to remember which ones are your parents, so that way you have the ability to save them down the line. You need to remember which ones are your parents. And she's like, she yelled at them, it's just like, just don't get any bigger or they'll eat you, and starts crying and gets out of the pig pen area. Which, yeah, I would be upset about that too. And Haku then proceeds to give Chihiro her clothes back, which also has the her goodbye card in it from her friend that has Chihiro on it. And that's how she's like, oh yeah, that's right, my name's Chihiro. How have I forgotten my name already? And this is where Haku explains that, Yubaba uses these powers by taking your name to control you. So hold on to that. And he's just like, I remember your name, but I forgot my name a long time ago. And everything. So it's like Haku is part of his name, but it's not his real name. And then then Haku ends up giving her rice balls that have, like a spell on them to help give Chihiro back her strength, which she then proceeds to slowly eat the first one, and then we just get the big globby tears come down while she's chowing down on the other 2, because the spell is supposed to help give her strength back and everything. And, Haku, takes her back to the bridge and says goodbye, and he says that he has some errands or stuff that he has to do and everything like that. And when Chihiro looks back, she ends up seeing this dragon flying away, and she's like, okay, Haku's a dragon. Got it. And she ends up making her way across the bridge again, where she sees this black figure with the mask on it that we know later is called No Face. And Chihiro has seen him a little bit already, but he hasn't been inside the bathhouse, so pay attention to that. Again, if you haven't watched Spirited Away and you're watching me do this review, go watch the movie first. It's so much better than whatever I can describe. But Chihiro makes her way back into where the boiler room is, and she ends up actually falling asleep there. Kamaji wakes up at one point, and he ends up actually like putting a cover over her and everything like that. And she leaves her clothes and her shoes down there with the soot sprites, and they keep them safe. How they're not all covered in soot and everything the next time she has them is completely unknown to me, but I guess the soot sprites are able to stay very, very clean, and everything. But she gives them her clothes, and then we later get to the point where, eventually, Yubaba and the other, Yubaba and her weird bird thing eventually return home, and the bathhouse gets up and running again. And Chihiro and Lin and Sen are, doing their morning chores and everything like that, or I guess afternoon chores, depending on, how things work. Because the bathhouse seems to mainly be operating at night, but they also have other stuff that they have to do during the day. There's also a scene at one point where we see all of the frogs and everything like that are doing most of the cooking. And there's this moment in there where we see all the stuff in the kitchen, and then there's just like this frog that walks by with like 2 platters and goes, not spicy enough. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, that's one of my favorite moments in the movie. Not spicy enough. It's like, okay. That happens earlier in the movie, but still I love it. And so Sen is now getting used to having to do this type of manual labor and everything like that, because she's not very used to it. She's a 10-year-old girl that lives in 2001 Japan that does not have to be the one to do all of this type of cleaning and everything like that. So she's having to learn how to do that. And Len is kind of like, have you never worked a day in your life? And Sen is just like, I'm sorry. And what ends up happening is they end up getting told that they have to go and clean the big tub today, which is apparently harassment, because it's a very, very dirty tub. But before they go and do it, Son ends up, she's like dumping out her water and everything like that from doing the mopping, and she sees the No Face outside. And she invites him into the bathhouse because she thinks he's a customer, and she invites him into the bathhouse. And he heads inside. Then Sen and Lin go to the tub, and they end up cleaning it all up and everything like that as much as they can in regards to outside the tub. And then inside the tub, there is just so much sludge and everything caked onto it that they can't scrub it off. So Lin's like, okay, we have to soak it off. And Sen goes to have to get a bath soak token from the foreman, who of course does not want to give her anything because, that would, help her out. So why should he give her anything? While this is going on, Yubaba senses something, and she looks out of her window in her office and sees that there is something slinking around in the rain, as she calls it, and heading toward the bathhouse, even though in the restaurant area, there's like all the lights are getting turned off and everything like that. And closing up as there's this spirit making its way through toward the bathhouse. What we also end up seeing is, of course, Chihiro is, the foreman will not give Chihiro will not give her any bath tokens. So what ends up happening is, he's being distracted by the call from Yubaba, which, first of all, Yubaba's phone is a little skeleton that just goes, which is just kind of funny. She calls down. But No Face has appeared next to where the foreman is, and he ends up actually, like, giving Sen one of the tokens, and she runs off. And it's it's just funny because like the foreman has Yubaba on the phone while this is happening, and she, he makes a noise and she's like, "Is something wrong?" He's like, "Nope, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine." It's like, so yeah, so that's funny. So Sen heads back to where Lin is, and they, Lin shows her how to send the bath token down to Kamaji and start filling up the tub and everything like that. Sen is then left with the bath to fill it, and then Lin goes off to try to get them food for breakfast. This then leads to where Chihiro ends up getting summoned by Yubaba to have to deal with this spirit that has shown up. Yubaba has made her way downstairs because she's identified that the spirit that has shown up is a stink spirit, and it is this walking mud pile of stink and ooze and yuck and mud and all this other stuff, and everything like that. And she's very suspicious of it, that he's not actually a stink spirit or not an ordinary stink spirit, but like, and even like all the staff at the bridge are trying to get the spirit to go away, and they just like pass out from how bad it stinks. And they, Yubaba brings Sen in, and she's like, "Okay, you have to take care of him. Take him to the big tub, make sure that he's taken care of him, get him out of here as soon as possible." And it just, he smells so bad that like both of them are just like trying, their noses are just like, "Oh god." And Chihiro's like hair is on end and everything like that, and so is Yubaba's, and it's like, oh god, how bad must that smell? And sometimes it's just like, I don't have the best sense of smell. I have a stuffed up nose on a good day, and it's very hard for me to smell anything that's not a very intense smell. So unfortunately, I probably wouldn't be safe from this. Unfortunately. But they end up, so Sen leads him through the bathhouse, and Yubaba's like, open up all of the windows, send all of the guests back to their rooms and everything like that, because they don't want the guests to get insulted by the bad smell, even though they would be able to clearly tell it's coming from the stink spirit, but they have to serve the spirits. And Sen is leading the stink spirit to the big tub, and while they're doing that, while this is happening, there's just all this ooze and goo coming out of the stink spirit, which is just disgusting and getting all over the place. And Lin sees this walking by, and she's got like rice for them for breakfast, and it's just such a bad smell. We see all the different staff have like masks on, or like us with COVID, with like stuff covering their noses and everything like that, so they're not inhaling the smell directly. And like, we just see the rice curdle and turn black, and that's how bad it smells. I'm like, oh god. But Sen leads the spirit into the big bath, and he climbs in, and the water goes from this nice, clean, water that's supposed to be really good for you, to just being nothing but mud all over the place, because like the spirit just like walked in, and like all this mud is all over the place now, overflowing, and like a layer of mud all over everything within that section. And Chihiro is like, okay, I'm gonna refill the bath, and she ends up sending a bath token down, because earlier the No Face had showed up and had offered Chihiro more of the bath tokens. Like, it stole the bath tokens and was giving them to Chihiro because Chihiro had been kind to it. And Chihiro was like, "No, I only needed the one," but like, he leaves her a bunch of them, and so she has them. And so she, sends another bath token down to Kamaji, and she's like climbing up the side of the bathtub that's just all caked in mud at this point in time. And while this is happening, Yubaba and the others are watching this and everything like that. And Chihiro, releases the water and starts filling the tub again. She kind of falls into the tub while this is happening, and the spirit like kind of lifts her out of the tub. And as the water is just pouring over the top of it, and it kind of like brings Chihiro close enough that she can like kind of start to feel something, and she feels something trapped in the spirit's side, and she thinks it's a thorn. And at this point, Lin has shown up to help Chihiro, and she's, Lin is like, I'm not gonna let him hurt you, Chihiro, about the spirit. And Chihiro's like, he's not trying to hurt me, but I think there's like a thorn stuck in his side or something. which then proceeds to be Yubaba comes down, gives Sen and Lin this rope, summons this rope that they then tie around the would-be Thorn. And she then they pass the rope around to a bunch of the other employees that have come down, and she's like, okay, we're all gonna pull until this Thorn comes out. And they start pulling, and like Yubaba is, everybody ready on my command to pull, and all of the other a bunch of the other spirits or the guests at the bathhouse along with other employees are all like cheering them on and everything like that. So the employees are all pulling and everything like that, with Sen and Lin at the forefront of it, pulling everything out. And first thing that pops out is this like old bike, and then there's all this other disgusting trash and goo and gunk and everything that's just being pulled out of this spirit that's just still being rushed over with water. And this is actually based off of something that actually happened to Hayao Miyazaki, who is a great lover of nature and has done lots of different things to help preserve nature and everything like that for conservation and all of that stuff. I mentioned some of that when I did the My Neighbor Totoro video. There's stuff there, and some of the other movies like Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind has a fair amount of like nature conscientious undertones to it. Same thing with like Pom Poko does as well. This one definitely does with this scene here, that it is at one point when Miyazaki was younger, he ended up cleaning out this river that was just filled with other polluted and litter and everything like that, and other trash and all this other stuff. And one of the things that he pulled out was this bicycle. So it's just like it's this autobiographical kind of thing there that happens. And they end up pulling all of this trash out, and Chihiro's like pulls out this last little like fishing line thing that just releases all of this disgusting gas and everything like that. And the spirit kind of like deflates out of everything, and Chihiro like gets wrapped up in like this ball of water. And so she kind of gets cleaned off in the ball of water because she got really dirty while she was doing everything else, but it kind of cleans her up a little bit. And when the water, kind of disappears from around her, she's actually holding in her hand a little orb, a little ball of something. She doesn't know what it is, but it's something. And it's a gift from this spirit. And, the water starts, kind of receding and washing away a bunch of the grit and everything like that and dirt. And the servants end up seeing that there's actually gold all over the floor and like the nooks and crannies and everything like that, and they start trying to grab it all. Yubaba scolds them, and then she tells Chihiro to move aside so that way the spirit can leave. And the spirit's head kind of like has popped out of the water at one point when everything first got cleaned out of it, and it like looked at Chihiro and was like, well done. And it's like this ancient looking face with like bushy eyebrows and everything like that. And it, gave Chihiro the little gift. And then the water boils up after Chihiro moves aside, and out pops this, very long river spirit body that just kind of like loops through and then like leaves through one of the other windows or door areas within the bathhouse and leaves. Yubaba is actually very happy because she ends up actually hugging Sen, and it's like the river spirit is very similar to Haku's dragon form, very long and windy and everything like that. And it flees off into the night and everything like that, so the river spirit has been like cleansed in that regard. And Yubaba ends up hugging Chihiro, and she's like, you did so great, we made so much money and everything like that. So then all the people have to then return all of the gold that they picked up, which is very annoying. And then we cut to later that night because everybody, they just had this kind of big party and everything like that because Sen did so well, and they say that helped the very powerful spirit. And Lin and Sen are talking, and as they look out over from the balcony from where their room is while they're eating dumplings, they look over at all of the different, because it rained so much, the whole landscape looks like the sea or like an ocean. And they see the train go by, and Lin is just like, someday I'm getting on that train. So we have that. And Sen keeps asking about Haku, and Lin is just like, well, you stop asking about Haku. Sen also then decides to taste a little bit of the thing that she got from the river spirit, which apparently tastes exceedingly unpleasant given her reaction, and she just like gulps down a bunch of the dumpling to get the bad taste out of her mouth. That night, one of the little frog servants that works that is an actual looking frog, makes its way into the bathhouse or the bath area where they had cleaned out the river spirit, and he's trying to find more gold. While he's there, the No Face ends up actually luring him with gold nuggets, luring him closer, grabs him, and eats him, swallows him up. And then one of the other foremen shows up, or one of the other guys that's in charge of a bunch of the other workhouse people, bathhouse people, shows up, and he ends up interacting with the No Face that now talks like the frog. And he's like, I want you to wake everybody up, and I want a bath, and I want all the food, and I want you to serve me, and I'll pay you up front. And he's like dropping gold out of his hands because the spirit has the ability to like make gold, supposedly. And so this then leads to where Sen has a dream where she runs into the pig house where all the pigs are, and she thinks that maybe the stuff she got from the river spirit can help her parents. Which in the dreams, the pigs just all end up trying to attack her and everything like that because she can't tell which ones are her parents. She then wakes up, and she ends up getting to... she wakes up and she sees that everybody else in the room is gone, and she gets dressed and she heads out, and she sees that Kamaji has already lit the boiler, and she's like, how late did I sleep? And she gets downstairs and she sees Lin, and Lin explains that there's this new guest here that's loaded with gold, and he's giving gold out by the handfuls to anyone who, will serve him. And so we cut back to where we see that the No Face has grown so much and has like grown hair, and it's just like gobbling down all of this food and everything like that, and like they're feeding him all the food that they have, as he's like sitting in this bath lounging and everything like that, and just like showering gold on anybody that brings him food and everything like that and serves him. And Sen doesn't really have much of an interest in this, and she ends up going back to her room, and she's like, I hope Haku comes back before I forget what my parents look like. And at that point, she ends up seeing the white dragon form that Haku has, and it comes flying, and it's being attacked by what look like birds at first, but when he gets closer, and he actually ends up like going into the window that is where Chihiro, Sen and the others' room is, and he's like bleeding all over the place, and he gets blood all over the place, and the white things end up like banging into the windows because Sen tries to close the door so they can't come in, but she realizes that they're paper. I know they have a specific word for what these things are, but I really don't know what they are off the top of my head. But they're like made of paper things. They're paper things that were trying to attack Haku, who then ends up making his way back out again after causing a bunch of damage within the room and getting blood all over the place. He ends up getting away and flying up, the side of the building and up into a window. Sen is watching this, and she's like, okay, I need to get up to where he is. So she ends up making her way through the bathhouse. She goes, and she ends up having to get by where they're having this big kind of parade thing, celebration thing for the rich man that's the No Face, and who ends up seeing Sen, and he tries to give her like this giant pile of gold, and she doesn't want it, which just kind of like very, very confuses him. And then they get rushed by everyone because he drops all the gold as Sen is trying to escape, or not escape, but get moving so she can go and help Haku. And this ends up resulting in the No Face then eating both the foreman, who had done like this like song and dance type of a thing to introduce him, eating him, and one of the other people that work there, gobbling both of them up. And that just makes everybody start panicking. and he's kind of gone mad, and Sen has made her way through the elevator, and then she has to end up making her way on the outside of the building, because the elevator won't go any higher, so she makes her way on the outside of the building and like runs across the pipe and has to climb up, and at this point in time she sees Yubaba returning as the bird, and she ends up making her way up to this closed window where she ends up having to get inside. While this has been happening, one of the actual paper bird thingies was actually kind of like attached to her, following her, and slips inside, opens the lock, which makes Chihiro then fall through the window and land on the ground. And she's fine, but she makes her way through, and she ends up actually ending up in the nursery. That is where the giant baby is. And while she's in there, she ends up having to hide because, first of all, she hears that, what ends up happening is she ends up like listening in, and she hears Yubaba talking to one of the men on the phone, is explaining to her, like, he's a no-face. You let a no-face into our building, and he's already eaten 2 people and everything like that. It's just like, don't let him eat anybody else until I get down there. Haku is bleeding all over the carpet. Just get him out of here, and everything like that. So Chihiro ends up Sen ends up having to hide, and what ends up happening is she hides in this giant pile of pillows in the baby room, and Yubaba comes in, and she ends up finding the baby. The baby is actually in the pile of pillows, and it's this huge baby. I think his name is Bao, B-O, with like a thing over the top, H. What ends up happening is, Yubaba interacts with her baby, and then, kind of tidies up the room and then leaves. And then Chihiro tries to get out so she can go and help Haku. The baby grabs her and pulls her in, and is like, you shouldn't go outside. There's germs outside, and they'll hurt you, and that's why I stay in this room and everything like that. And she's like, no, staying in this room is what will make you sick. And he's like, well, I want you to play with me, because if you don't, I'll cry and Mama will come in here and kill you. And, if you play with me now, or I'll break your arm, and everything like that. And Sen ends up showing him her hand that actually has some of Haku's blood on it. Showing him that, which then makes him let her go, and she's able to get out of the room and into Yubaba's office, where she sees Haku is about to be pushed down this pipe type thing, or this hole in the floor, by the 3 heads. I don't know if the 3 heads have a thing of what they're called. I'm sure there is something that they are specifically called, but I do not know what it is off the top of my head. That's not something I'm aware of. Same thing with, I think the bird woman has a specific name, but I don't know. I'm not given specific names in the movie, so I'm not sure. While this is happening, Sen has made her way over, and she's trying to pull Haku back from falling down the pit in the floor, the hole. And what ends up happening is the baby makes its way out of the room for the first time, and is, starts crying, and it's just like, play with me now or I'll start crying. And, Sen is just like, well, I need to help Haku, and, you can't, don't cry right now, and I have to help him, but I'll play with you later, and everything like that. And at this point, we hear what sounds like Yubaba's voice, but it's not. It's Zeniba, who is Yubaba's twin sister. And we see the little paper thing. Out of the paper thing grows this kind of hologram, I guess, but it's supposed to be Yubaba, or it's supposed to be Zeniba, who looks exactly like Yubaba. I know in one of the artworks that I found for one of the original concepts was that Yubaba was supposed to be this very stout and short one, and then Zeniba would be the much taller and thinner looking one. So you could very much tell the difference, but they decided to go with having them look pretty much exactly the same, even down to the fact that Zeniba has pretty much all the same rings that Yubaba has, type of a thing. But Zeniba is still see-through, as she puts it, and she ends up explaining to Chihiro, first of all, she causes a bunch of damage. She turns the baby into a mouse. she turns the bird into a little tiny bird, and she turns the 3 head things into the baby. So she's having fun messing with that. She also then explains to Chihiro what happened, and she's like, you know, Haku became my sister's apprentice so he could steal all of her secrets, and now he's stolen mine. He stole my solid gold monogram seal. It's very powerful magic, and I want it back. And there's a curse on it that anyone who steals it will die. And, you know, so the paper things were Zenibas that attacked, you know, that were attacking Haku and everything like that. And, you know, that's very easily explained there. And that Haku stole her solid gold monogram seal, and all of that. And so Zeniba is like, you know, she kind of threatens Sen here as well, because she's like, if you tell anybody about this, I'll rip your mouth out, type of a thing. And it's just like, you and your sister may be very different, but you also both have very violent ways of threatening people. Did your parents treat you that way? Because if so, I'm sorry, and both of you need therapy. But what ends up happening is Haku kind of wakes up a little bit and sees what's going on, and he bashes the paper thing that had brought Zeniba, and she goes like, ow, a paper cut, and like just like splits down the middle and vanishes. And at this point in time, Sen and Haku end up falling down the pit, and the little mouse and the bird thing have like crawled over to her, and she picked them up, and they were like riding on her shoulder, so they're all falling down the pit. And they end up, you know, and it's like, this is like into like the inner workings of the building, and they end up falling eventually through the like a fan that's right above Kamaji that lands into the boiler room, and Sen lands on Kamaji. Haku falls away, and he ends up kind of like banging himself against like this wall that has all these different herbs in it that Kamaji needs for the baths, and like scratching stuff and putting blood everywhere and causing problems. And Kamaji is trying to get Sen to not go near him, but Sen just goes over to him anyway. And she's like, Haku, I have something for you that will help. And she pulls out the medicine from the river spirit, and she's like, it's okay, it won't hurt you. And she even takes a bite to show that it won't hurt him. And she ends up actually kind of pinning his head to the ground, and she has to like force his mouth open and shove part of the medicine into his mouth, and then like hold his mouth shut so he will actually swallow it. And we see that, and like while this is happening, like Kamaji is watching this, little baby and bird are watching this, and you know, the soot sprites have shown up and they're watching this. And what ends up happening is Haku ends up kind of belching up this glob of something that then lands on the floor, and part of it is this gold seal that is Zeniba's seal, and the other part of what looks like this little black slug. Sen grabs the seal, and then she ends up stepping on the black slug thing, and then Kamaji has her, you know, oh, that's evil magic, put your thumb and 4 fingers together, and then he like cuts through them, and I guess that's a way to get rid of the curse or something like that. I don't know, it's never quite explained. Again, it's a Japanese tradition thing that I just don't know, that's from their culture, that's not something that's prevalent with me. And what ends up happening is, you know, Haku then transforms back into his human form, and Sen and Kamaji end up getting, you know, him much more settled, and, you know, give him, you know, water, any other medicine to help him and everything like that, because, you know, Haku was bleeding from the inside. And Sen explains that this is Zeniba's gold seal, and it's magic, and it had a curse on it, and I need to return it to her and everything like that. At this point in time, Kamaji goes and he starts like digging through like his drawers of stuff that's his personal stuff. Lin shows up, is happy to see that Sen is okay, and she's like, I went to our room and there was blood everywhere, and you know, there's the being called No Face, is, you know, the thing that was in that is actually the rich guest was actually this guy called No Face, who's actually a demon type of a thing, and Yubaba is trying to get him to leave, you know, is trying to get him to leave the bathhouse and everything like that. And he wants you, and Sen is like, well, I let him into the bathhouse because I thought he was a guest. And they're like, oh god. And what ends up happening is, baby girl, and what ends up happening is yeah, I know, I love you too. And what ends up happening is Kamaji gives Sen these tickets for the train that will take them to Swamp Bottom, which is where Zeniba lives. And what ends up happening is, Lin is just like, where did you have those? Where did you get those? And he's like, I've been saving them for 40 years and everything, but Sen needs them more than I do. So Sen gets her clothes and shoes from the Soot Spirit, so she has them. And then Haku is now being taken care of by Kamaji, and then her and Lin end up making their way back up to the bathhouse where the No-Face is. And what ends up happening is Sen gets sent in to deal with him after kind of getting threatened by Yubaba. Also, Yubaba sees the little mouse and the bird, and she does not recognize them. She says, why is there a dirty mouse in the bathhouse and everything like that? And that just makes the little mouse sad because the mouse is her baby. And what ends up happening is, of course, Sen goes in and she's talking to the No-Face, and he's just like, what ends up happening is Sen is talking to the No-Face, and he's like, you want gold? I'm not giving it to anybody but you, and everything. And he tries to give her more gold, and she doesn't want it. And then the little mouse bites him, which is just kind of funny. And from there, Sen ends up asking him, well, why don't you want to go home or anything like that? And he's like, I don't have a home to go to, and everything like that. And he's getting, kind of sad and emotional to a degree and kind of lashing out. And Sen ends up being like, well, I have to go and help someone right now, but I have something that might help you. And she's like, I was going to use it for my parents, but you can have it. And she tosses the last bit of the medicine into his mouth, and he swallows it. And then this proceeds to him vomiting up stuff. And he is vomiting up black ooze and goo, and he's vomiting up the people that he swallowed. And while this is happening, Chihiro is leading him on a chase through the bathhouse and everything to lead him out of the bathhouse and everything. And what happens is, at one point, Yubaba tries to stop him, and she ends up just getting her attack blasted back at her, and then just getting covered in sludge, which is just, yep, you deserve this. And while this is happening, Chihiro, or Sen, is leading the No-Face through the building and everything like that. And he's, getting smaller and smaller and vomiting up more and more of the gunk and everything like that, including any people that he ate. And, Sen gets out of the building where Lin is waiting with the boat to take her to the bus stop. And what ends up happening is, No-Face follows them out, and he ends up finally vomiting up the frog that was the first person that he ate, and the frog swims back. And, Lin takes Sen and the little mouse and the bird to the train station, where Sen has stated that, while the train only runs in one direction, she can always walk back along the tracks when she's done at Swamp Bottom, so she can get back and help her parents and everything at the bathhouse. And my baby girl. And what ends up happening is, of course, the No-Face is following her. Lin kind of says goodbye to Sen, and she's like, just, you better come back, and I'm sorry I called you a dope. And she, threatens No-Face, and she's like, if there's one scratch on that girl, No-Face, you're gonna pay, mister, and everything like that. So we have that. And she Sen waits, and then when the bus shows up, they end up getting on the bus along with No-Face. And, that takes care of all 4 of their tickets, because the mouse and the bird count as tickets. And they all get on the bus, and there's all these, I guess, souls or something like that. It's never quite explained. They're just part of the spirit world that are riding the bus as well. And so they're riding it along the tracks and everything like that, and seeing all these different things go by. And Sen is just very focused on what she's trying to do. We cut back to you know, where we get these moments where we do cut back to the bathhouse where um, Haku wakes up. Kamaji explains what happened. He says that the only thing that would have helped get rid of Zeniba's curse would have been love. And Haku then makes his way up to where Yubaba's office is, and Yubaba ends up not being happy about any of this because, A, they did get a bunch of gold, but she's like, Sen didn't get us nearly enough gold. She'll have to be punished. Please tell me her parents are, ready to be eaten by now. And the others are just like, but Sen is the one who saved us. She's the one that got the No Face out of here and everything like that. And while this is happening, off to the side, the baby that had been the three heads all put together is actually like chowing down on all of these different treats and everything like that. Haku gets in there and is explained, says it's like, you can't even see that something very important to you has been replaced. And first of all, she looks at the gold, thinking that like the gold is what was replaced. And then while this is happening, the baby is making a lot of noise, and Yubaba tries to like zip its mouth shut, which then changes it back into the three heads, and then they roll, bounce, whatever off. She freaks out. The gold literally just turns into dirt, and she runs into the room where the baby is supposed to be, and she's looking all over and everything like that, trying to find it. And she is just like getting breathing fire more and more, and like, shows up, and like she's like looking at Haku, and Haku had showed up in the room, and she's like, where's my baby? And I can't do it the right way, but she's just like, where's my baby? And Haku is like, she's with your sister. And this just kind of like deflates Yubaba, and she looks very, very, this is the most unput together we see her in it. And she's like, let me guess, you'll get my baby back for me, but at a price. And he's like, yes, what you need to do is you need to give Sen the chance to win her freedom. I will bring you back your baby if you give Sen the chance to win her freedom along with her parents. She's like, fine, I'll give her one chance, and if she fails, she's mine. So that's happening at the bathhouse, and supposedly Haku leaves. On the train, they eventually do arrive at Swamp Bottom, and they start making their way through. And out of the swamp hops this lamp, which I want this lamp somewhere in my house. At some point in time, I want this type of a lamp. And it's just like the lamp hops, because it has like a hand on its like the base is a hand, and it hops out and it like bows to them, and then it like leads them through the swamp before like reattaching itself just outside of where Zeniba's house is. And they make their way into Zeniba's like cottage, and she ends up, Sen returns the seal and everything. And Zeniba's like, well, I thank you for returning it, but I'm still angry at Haku for, cutting me in half. I'm still angry about it and everything. And she's like looking over, and she's like, where's my curse on the seal? And Sen is just like, oh, you mean that black slug thing? I stepped on it. And she's like, you squashed it. She just starts laughing about that. And Zeniba explains, no, that wasn't my curse. That was a black slug that Yubaba put inside of Haku so she could control him, and you squashed it. Oh, that's so funny. And she's just like, yes, that is very funny. And she's just like laughing at this point in time. And she ends up explaining that no, the curse that was on this, the only thing that can break it is love. And Chihiro Sen proceeds to explain what happened. And Zeniba is like, okay, well, why don't we all sit and talk and everything like that. And Sen is just like, can you remove the curse that's on these two? And Zeniba is like, oh, the curse on them wore off long ago. You can change back if you want. And both of them just like shake their heads. The mouse and the bird just like shake their heads. And they proceed to then sit, and they end up having, tea and everything like that. And the mouse and the bird are kind of actually running on this like spinning wheel type of a thing out of, Sleeping Beauty, spinning thread and everything like that, while Zeniba and Sen and No Face are all sitting and talking. And Zeniba has very much kind of started treating Sen much better and everything like that, and it's being much more polite. It's like, well, Sen was not the one that took it from you in the first place. She has now returned it and everything like that. And, so Sen has explained what happened, how she ended up at the bathhouse and everything like that, and what happened with Haku and all of that. And, Zeniba advises Sen that the best way to help Haku and her parents is to be able to remember try to remember everything, what she knows about them. And Sen is like, well, I feel like I've met Haku before, but I can't remember where or when. And earlier in the movie, there had been this moment when they had fallen through the hole in the floor and were making their way through like the bowels of the bathhouse, when Sen was, riding on Haku and hanging on to him. She had this flash of like being underwater and, something like that, and she can't figure out why. And, she was focusing on other things at the moment, so that's understandable. And now she is just like, I'm not sure what is going on. And like, while this is happening, at one point, like the mouse and the bird run over, grab cookies, gobble them up, go back, keep running the spinning wheel. And we cut to, Zeniba is just like, well, I want you to call me Granny from now on, and you go and sit and think about everything you can remember for your parents and for Haku and everything like that, while the boys and I make you a gift. And while this is happening, we cut to a little bit later, and Sen is just kind of like has been sitting and thinking, and we see that No Face and the mouse and the bird have been helping spin more thread and everything like that. And then Zeniba is helping them with knitting, and she's like, knit one, purl two, knit one, purl two, very good. And we see them all like sitting and knitting, which is adorable. And Sen comes over and she's like, I keep trying, Granny, but I can't think of anything that would help Haku. And she's like, that's okay. And she gives her a hair tie that's made out of the thread that her friends wove, and she gives the hair tie to Sen, and it's this very pretty little hair tie, and Sen ties back her hair. I debated about putting my hair in a ponytail for this video, since that's the way Sen wears it for the majority of the movie, but I was just like, nah, it's fine. Ponytails aren't really my thing, unless I'm doing a lot of like work outside or something. And so Sen ties her hair back, and they hear this like rattling by the door, and Zeniba's like, well, why don't you go and let in another guest? And Sen goes over and she opens the door, and there's Haku in his dragon form, and he's all better. And she runs out and she hugs Haku, and she's just like, oh, I'm so happy you're okay and all of that. And Zeniba comes out and like slightly scolds Haku, who of course bows down more, and like the asking for forgiveness type of a thing. And she's like, I'm still angry at you, Haku, but I will forgive you if you take care of this girl, and if you take care of Sen. And he's he'll take care of Sen and everything like that. So I guess that little relationship is better now. And so the mouse and the bird get ready to leave, and the mouse gives Zeniba a little kiss on the nose and then flies over, ready to leave. And Zeniba ends up offering to have No Face stay with him, because he's just like, I could use a good helper and everything like that. So No Face is going to stay there because Sen had mentioned earlier to Lynn that like I think being in the bathhouse makes him crazy, makes the No Face crazy. And I don't know if the No Face is supposed to be based off of a specific thing in Japanese folklore. I'm not sure, but it could have been, could have not. I'm not sure. It's not something I'm exceedingly familiar with if it is, so that. But so the No Face will stay with Zeniba. And Chihiro and San goes over and she tells Granny her real name, and that it's Chihiro. And she's like, oh, well, what a pretty name. you take good care of it. And then, San gets on Haku's back, and they start, along with the bird and the mouse, and they start flying back toward the bathhouse. And while they're flying, Sen has this other moment where she remembers being underwater and being saved, and like her little pink shoe getting rushed away in the water and all of that in a river. And she tells Haku that it's like, when I was little, I fell into a river and I almost drowned, but the river carried me to shore and I was fine. The name of the river was the Kohaku River. And she's like, I think that was you. I think your real name is Kohaku River. And we see this moment where, like, Haku, in the dragon form, like, his eyes just go big, and then, like, all of his scales and everything just, like, burst off of him, and he transforms back into his human form. And, they kind of are falling at this point in time, but, Haku is able to, like, stabilize them, and, he's like, I remember now. I remember I was the spirit of the Kohaku River, and I remember you, and I remember your little pink shoe, and I remember saving you, and all of this, and, and she's like, that river is all filled in. It's all apartments now. And he's like, that's why I can't find my way home. And everything, because, like, earlier, Kamaji had explained to, Sen, when they were taking care of Haku, that one day Haku just showed up out of nowhere and with no memory of who he was, and he became Zeniba's apprentice and everything like that, or became Yubaba's apprentice and all of that. So it's supposed to be that the dog is snoring very loudly in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. But so it's just like, that's what happens. And, they filled in the river, so the river spirit didn't have any place to go. They didn't have anything connecting them that could help them remember. And so, so they're both, Sen is crying, tears of joy that she was able to help Haku and everything. And there, the group, the rest of them fly back their way to the bathhouse. When they get to the bathhouse, we see, or on their way back to the bathhouse, we cut to Yubaba, who is waiting out there with like a bunch of pigs, and we see a bunch of the staff of the bathhouse out there ready to watch this and see what's going to happen, because Sen helped them and they want to see what's going to happen with her. And even some of the guests are watching too, which is just kind of fun. I'm like, can you imagine being one of the people that showed up there, one of the spirits that showed up there on their first day? Because we actually see the radish spirit multiple times at various points throughout the movie, which is just kind of funny. He's like dancing, but it's just like, can you imagine being one of the spirits that showed up there as a guest at the bathhouse, and like the giant stink spirit comes in, and then all of this happens, and then now there's this other spirit, this no face, that shows up and is taking all the food, and then now there's this other stuff that's happening. It's like, this was a very eventful vacation. I'm gonna go back to my home now. Thank you. So we get to see a bunch of that. But we get to see some of that, but they show up, and Sen and Haku arrive with the mouse and the bird, and she's like, Yubaba is like, I see you didn't bring my baby back, which then results in the bird dropping the mouse and the mouse transforming back into the baby right in front of Yubaba, and she's like, oh, my baby, you're okay, you're standing on your own, are you okay, did they do terrible things to you? And he's like, no, I'm fine, Sen and I had a really good time. And at this point, Haku reminds Yubaba about, you made the promise, to test Sen and everything. And she's like, yes, I know, I remember. And the baby ends up as actually like, if you make Sen cry, I won't like you anymore. And she's just like, but a deal's a deal, honey. I have to do the test. I made a deal. And he's just like, She's like, so Yubaba was like, I don't want my baby to hate me. By the way, I don't know if he's her biological baby. I don't know if she stole him. I don't know if he's something else. I have no idea. We never find out. He's just a baby that she has. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Who's the father? I don't know. He's a big baby. She steal him in a deal or something? She clearly loves him, but I don't know. And Sen steps up and she's like, yes, I know, I'm here to take the test. What is it that I have to do? And, you know, Yubaba leads her over to where all these pigs are lined up. And she's like, your test is this. I have your contract right here. If you can tell me which of these pigs is your mother and father, you can all go home. I'll tear up your contract and you can go home. And you get one shot. And Sen looks over the pigs. And like this moment of pause as like everybody else is watching and waiting. And she's like, there has to be a mistake. None of these pigs are my parents. And Yubaba is like, are you sure? And Sen is like, yes. And the contract just explodes. And then like the pigs transform into a bunch of the women and the frogs that work at the bathhouse, transform them into pig, or transform them into humans, or into the regular form. Is like, you got it. Like all the other people that work at the bathhouse or the other spirits are all celebrating and everything like that. And Kamaji is just like, yes. Like 3 of his arms, or like 4 of his arms, or whatever, and like everybody's just cheering and everything like that Sen managed to accomplish, pass the test and everything like that. So we get that and everything, and Sen is just happy that she managed to do this, and Sen, says goodbye, and she even thanks Yubaba, and calling her Granny, which Yubaba doesn't necessarily like, but heads off. And so Sen is like waving goodbye to everyone, and now she is Chihiro again because her contract has been broken. And she gets her name back and everything like that, so she's Chihiro once again. And Haku leads her back through the rest of the the restaurants and everything back to the edge of the river. And he's like, okay, your parents, when you broke the contract, when you passed the test, your parents woke up on the other side of the river with no memory of what happened. So you have to go back across the river, but you can't turn back until you're on the other side of the tunnel. If you do, I guess that means she has to go back to the bathhouse, or everything is reversed or something. And, and he's like, don't worry, I have my name back now. You helped me with that, and now I can work on trying to get my memory back or try to fix things here at the bathhouse or whatever. But we'll see each other again. And they say goodbye, and Chihiro starts making her way across the riverbed and then across the fields to where she sees her parents waiting outside of the entrance to the broken down train station area. And she gets to them and they're just like, Chihiro, where have you been? And they scold her for the fact that she had run off and everything like that. They have no idea what happened. They just think it's the same day, and Chihiro just managed to run off for a little while. And they start heading into the building, and Chihiro pauses for a moment, and we see her, almost look back, but she stops herself and she makes her way through. And we basically get a copy of the scene when they're heading through the building in the first place. With Chihiro clinging to her mother and everything like that. We basically get a replay of that, and they make their way through, and they get out, and they get to where they see their car, and the car is just covered in leaves and some sticks, and the inside's dusty, and the parents are trying to figure out what the heck happened, and they think it's a prank. And they all get back into the car and everything, and Chihiro did look back after she was on the other side, which I know in Greek mythology there is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, who Orpheus is the musician who makes his way all the way down through the realm of the underworld, playing his lyre the entire way down, and makes his way down there because his love Eurydice is down there, that she died on their wedding day. And he makes his way down there, and his music is so beautiful that it moves the prisoners and those who are being tortured and those who work in the realm of the underworld and everything like that. And it moves Persephone to tears, and it moves Hades, and Hades agrees to allow, because he has been moved so much by the music, that he will allow Eurydice to follow Orpheus back out of the underworld. But if Orpheus turns to look around to see if she is truly there, then she will be taken back. And he makes his way all the way back out, and he's like, we're so close, we tripped at the finish line type of a thing. And he's trying to get, he's almost all the way out of the underworld, and he has resisted looking back so many times, and he's almost out, and he looks back and he sees that it is Eurydice behind him, but he broke the promise, and Eurydice gets taken back to the underworld. For reference, eventually Orpheus is killed, if I remember correctly, by being ripped apart by a bunch of nymphs who want him to play music, and he won't do it, so they get angry and rip him apart, and he's eventually reunited with Eurydice that way, I guess. For brief detour into a Greek mythology there, but like it's I guess there's like something there. It's like that's a very similar thing. It's like not looking back into where you came from or whatever, looking back into another realm. I'm not sure, but they make their way back and they get into the car, and the parents are. Are you all ready now, Chihiro? For your new school and new life and everything like that. And she's like, I think I can handle it. So that's pretty much where that ends. But what we also get is there's not really too much else. I really wish they had like something that was like a sequel or a continuation to it, but it's supposed to be like Chihiro just goes on into her life and everything like that, and she like holds on to her memories, I would assume, of being at the bathhouse and interacting with Haku and everybody else, and that maybe eventually her and Haku end up meeting again. In regards to the cast, there is, of course, the original Japanese voice cast, and then there is the English voice cast, which is the one that I am more familiar with. Nothing against the Japanese voice cast, obviously. But for Chihiro/Sen, for the English dub, we have Davei Chase, who is also best known for playing Lilo in Lilo and Stitch in the original movie. And she did the voice dub for this right around the same time that she would have been doing Lilo. We have Jason Marsden as Haku. We have Suzanne Plachette as Yubaba and Zeniba. We have David Ogden Stiers as Kamaji, who has popped up before in other ones. He plays Piccolo in Porco Rosso, and I think he's in another one of the movies, but for some reason I am completely blanking on which movie he's in. He's also in several Disney movies. He's Ratcliffe in Pocahontas. He's Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast. So yeah, there's that. David Ogden Stiers is just awesome. And then we have Susan Egan as Lynn, and Susan Egan also played the Porco's love interest in Porco Rosso. She also plays Megara in Hercules. We have John Ratzenberger is in this as like one of the assistant manager guys, who's the one that's like singing It's Eaten by No Face. He's was in pretty much every Pixar movie from Toy Story up through, I don't remember exactly what, but he's kind of a bit not in as many, or not in them as much now. And that's about it. We do have, we have Tara Strong as the baby. We have Lauren Holly as Chihiro's mother. Not really anybody else here. Michael Chiklis plays the dad. So if I'm remembering correctly, Michael Chiklis was the Thing in the Fantastic Four movies that came out that had Chris Evans and such in it. But I don't think I recognize anybody else here on the list off the top of my head. But, so that would be the English cast. So that's what I have there for Spirited Away. This review ended up being an hour and 40 some minutes, so that's fun. But that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I am trying to remember what the next one is, and I just don't remember off the top of my head for what the next Miyazaki movie is. But whichever one it is, that'll be hopefully going up the Sunday after this one goes up. As I said, I'm actually recording this before the end of the year. But then it will go up at the beginning of next year. So that's what I have. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a happy holidays and a happy new year. So bye.